everyone, and welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to be doing something very different to me. To me, this is a very strange thing to do. In today's tutorial, we're actually going to be making a bag without a sewing machine. Today, we're going to be going over the Park ID wallet bag from Rosebarn Embroidery. This is an adorable little tiny make. It's got a little zipper on the top. It's got an ID window right here. Open it up. Can hold just your bare essentials like your D-rings or maybe some change and lip gloss, whatever you need. This is a great bag. I can see I've made 2 of them, and this is a great bag for kiddos. It's a very, very cute, small, super quick make. However, as a bag maker who makes a lot of bags at my sewing machine, this was a very difficult project to wrap my mind around because we're not using a sewing machine today. We're going to be using an embroidery machine. Now you can use a single needle or a multi-needle embroidery machine. It does not matter. You got to make sure you have the right hoop size. The pattern recommends a 6x10 hoop, so you're going to need a bigger hoop for this one. But you don't actually sew, sew anything. You don't even sew it closed in the end. It blows my mind. So again, in full transparency, the first time I made this bag, I spent most of my time like that. I did not understand at all how this was going to come together. I needed my sewing machine. However, after I made it, I was blown away. It's another one of those projects where you're kind of like, this isn't right. This isn't right. This can't be right the whole time. And in the very end, you turn it all out and you're like, what? This is adorable. How did I make that? So I am going to be walking you through this entire pattern today. So if you're in the same position where I was, where you have an embroidery machine, you see all these people making these adorable little bags in their embroidery machine, but you just can't seem to wrap your mind around how that's done, I hope this video today will help walk you through it. Now, warning, I am not an in the hoop bag professional here. This is the first time I've ever done this. So I'm gonna show you what I do and how it works. However, I know a lot of you watching have a lot more experience making these types of bags. So anything I've done wrong, comment down below. Any tips or tricks, anything at all you can share to help me and other beginners at this, leave them down in the comment section below. I have a lot more of these tutorials coming, so we're just gonna get better each time. So thank you so much to Rosebarn Embroidery for allowing me to film a tutorial today. I am so excited to play with your patterns. You have so many, guys, you gotta check out their website. If you haven't already, go check it out. So many options. She just came out with like a mouse pad on an embroidery machine. I don't know if I'm ready for that, but it's on the list. So if you're new to the channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Anything at all you want to say, leave them down in the comment section. At the very top of the comment section will be a comment from me with timestamps for every single step of this tutorial. It is a very, very quick make, but there are like 3 main steps to this, at least 3 main steps. So I'm just gonna keep those down in the comment section. So if there's just one part of the project you're kind of stuck on, just click on that timestamp and it'll take you straight there in the video. All right, let's get started. So when you go online to download the pattern, she has 2 options for this Park ID wallet. The only difference between them is the zipper you're going to be using. So the standard version uses a number 3 zipper, and then she has another version for a number 5 zipper. So if you're using zipper tape that has a zipper pull, more than likely it is a number 5. If you're using a zipper like from Zip It or one that you bought at a craft store, it's a little bit skinnier, that's more than likely a number 3 zipper. So just make sure you get the pattern for the zipper you're gonna be working with, but that's really the only difference between the 2 patterns. So one of the things that I love about this, and a lot of you guys are gonna know, is that it is a super scrappy project. This is all scraps. This is a scrap zipper. These are scrap fabric, scrap clear vinyl, scrap cork, scrap everything. I love that. I love a way to use really small scraps. So really all you need is a fat quarter of a exterior fabric, a fat quarter of the lining fabric, a small cut of clear vinyl. They do suggest using gauge 12 or thicker vinyl for this. I will be using a number 5 zipper today. This is a scrap zipper from Sally Tomato, and then I put on a fun little zipper pull on it. I also have a 3/4 of an inch by 2 inch scrap cut of cork. This is going to be the little D-ring holder on the side. And then I have a 3/4 of an inch D-ring that I'll be attaching to this as well. This is all optional. You can see here I just put a little 1 inch wide scrap of vinyl. you don't have to add anything. It's totally up to you. But if you wanted to be able to, clip this onto a backpack or onto a purse, you're gonna want something there to clip it to. For this project today, I will be using tearaway. We will be re-hooping 3 times, which means you're gonna need 3 cuts of tearaway. I just use 1 layer each time. And then to actually close the final hole in the very end of the bag, I'm gonna be using a very small scrap cut of Heat and Bond Ultra Hold. It's an iron-on adhesive. It's a double-sided adhesive. I'm gonna show you how I work with that. This is a fun thing just to have on hand if you have an embroidery machine. You can use it for lots of different projects and it will last you a long time. So here's some of the other stuff we'll be using today. I have some regular scissors here. I use this for cutting the tearaway. Then I have my Kai fabric scissors. I have a small pair of snips for the threads. I'll be using masking tape and washi tape. You really only need one or the other, but masking tape is a little bit firmer. Washi tape is really easy to sew over. It comes off really easy, so I like to have both on hand just in case I have a preference at the time. And then I'll be using my 8" by 9" magnetic mighty hoop today. This hoop just makes the hoop changes very quick, very easy. I don't have to spend a whole lot of time adjusting anything. So now the pattern is broken up into 3 different sections, which they call 3 different hoops. So on the first section, you'll be sewing all of these items here on at the embroidery machine, and then you will take this sewn combination out of the hoop, clean it up, then re-hoop another piece of tearaway and start working on this piece, adding in the first piece, and then again, after the second hoop, we'll take it out, clean it up, start on the third hoop and incorporate these pieces into the design. So first, before we get started, I want to run through what all of these pieces are. For the first hoop, you're going to have a piece of clear vinyl, and then you're going to have 2 exterior front side cuts and 2 lining side cuts. Now the measurements for all of this are in the pattern. These side cuts right here are the sides of your clear window. So if you have a directional print, think about that now. These are going to go on the sides, which depending on how you look at it, it might be the top and bottom, or if you fold it up like this, then it's the sides. But that's what the first part of the hoop is, the clear vinyl and attaching these sides to the front and also to the lining. Hoop 2 is just the window top. Now that is this little strip of fabric right here that goes along the top of your clear vinyl. I think that it would be really fun to use an accent piece here. I'm just using the same exterior in the pattern, but you could do like a fun strip that really pops right here, which I think would look neat, especially if you did it on the sides as well and made it just so scrappy. I love scrappy. So the third hoop has the most pieces. First, we have the front. Now this is the front of your bag on the exterior. It's what's gonna be behind this clear pocket in the front. Then you're gonna have your inside lining. Now this is a bigger piece of fabric. This is going to be on the inside of your bag right here. Next, you're gonna have your back outside lining. This is a piece that's gonna be shown on the back side of your pouch. So if you want it to be the same as the exterior on the front, just make sure you think about that. The same size piece of fabric will be the back inside lining. This will go obviously inside the bag. It does say you can add batting to this. I did do that on this second version here, and it does provide a little bit more cushion. However, I think I actually prefer this without batting. You're gonna need a 12" or longer piece of zipper. Honestly, 12 inches will be very long. You're gonna cut this down, but you wanna have a longer zipper than necessary. This is also the step where we'll be adding a strap tab and our D-ring if you're using that. Like I said, I have a 2" by 3/4" piece of cork here, and then a 3/4" D-ring. I am not interfacing any of these items with anything. There is no woven interfacing. You can, but I haven't tested that out. I find it very cute, very soft, very quick without interfacing it. However, I do plan to try again in future bags, adding some interfacing to this to make it a little bit more sturdy. All right, so let's prep for our first hoop. I'm just grabbing a piece of stabilizer here. This is just that tearaway stabilizer. I'm just gonna cut it, and then I'm just gonna use my magnetic hoop to pop it in place. Here we go. I do want to make mention that there are 3 files you'll be using on your embroidery machine. The file name that ends in a 1 is for hoop 1. The file name that ends in a 2 is for hoop 2. And the file name that doesn't have a number at the end of it is for hoop 3. So I'll show you what the pictures of these files look like on the machine as we do them. So now let's take this to the machine and get ready to start stitching. So the first file you're going to be working with looks just like this. It looks just like a box with nothing fancy going on, just a box. So let's just get this design centered on our hoop. So when I'm picking thread colors here, honestly, I pick the same color for every single step. Since this isn't a traditional embroidery design where they have a lot of different colors, you don't really need more than one color. So I'm going to use a dark green, which is my number 6. So I'm just going to change all these to 6. I also have my machine set to automatic manual. We don't want the machine moving on to the next step on its own. Every single step is considered a piece of stitching, so we need it to stop after every single step. So automatic manual is great. Click OK. Okay, once we have our design traced out, we're just going to run the first step, which is going to be the placement step for our clear window. All right, once we have that placement stitch there, we're going to take our clear piece of vinyl, which I know can be a little tricky to see, and we're going to lay it over that placement stitch, and it should cover the entire rectangle. Now, I find clear vinyl to be very sticky, so I'm just going to use some washi tape to tape down the edges. And the next step is going to be a tack down stitch, which is just going to keep our clear vinyl in place. So now we're going to remove the hoop from the machine, take it to the table so that we can apply some fabric to the front and the back of the hoop. All right, so now you can remove this tape here if you'd like. I am going to pull it back and trim down my clear vinyl just a little bit. I found in my last one I forgot to do this, and then it got a little too thick at the seams. So I'm just going to trim down my vinyl so that it's about 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch from this stitch line all the way around. It just makes future steps easier if you do it now. Try to make sure you don't cut your tear away while you're doing this. All right, one of the things you might want to do too is mark which side of your hoop is going against you. If you're using a multi-needle like me, I can honestly put this hoop in either way and it gets a little disoriented. I'm pretty sure this is the spot that points out towards my belly. So if you need to, mark that. This is a little tip from me to you. All right, so now let's grab one of our exterior side pieces and we're going to lay it right side down along the long edge of the clear vinyl. And you just want to make sure that it extends about 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch past this stitch line right here. So it's going to be going up over the top like that, and then just use some tape to tape it in place. One thing I will mention about these types of patterns that I had to learn was that none of these pieces are cut exactly the size they need to be. So all of the pieces are bigger than they need to be. So there's wiggle room here for when you place all of this. So I'm taping this exterior piece along the top edge, so the edge furthest away from me, the long clear vinyl edge towards the top of my hoop. Now I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to take one of my lining cuts, and again on that top edge that's towards the top of the hoop, I'm going to lay my lining cut right side down and have it overhang this top stitch line right here, that's the longer stitch line, about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. And I'm trying to keep it as straight as possible. All right, once you have your lining taped in place, you can flip this over and we can take this back to the machine and run the next stitch. So this next stitch is a placement stitch that's going to run right along the top edge of your side fabric. Make sure your lining fabric is nice and smooth and hasn't gotten twisted around underneath your hoop. So once you have that in place, let's remove this from the machine and get ready to do top stitching. Go ahead and remove your tape if you added it to the sides. And now what we're going to do is we're going to fold this exterior top piece right side up. But instead of pushing it as tight as we can get it so the stitches kind of show, we're going to just let it overhang those stitches about 1/8 of an inch. I know that this is a little tricky. I suggest finger pressing it. You could always get a pressing cloth to put over your clear vinyl and use an iron here, like a really small little Cricut iron, to press this seam so it stays really nice. But I just kind of roll it down a little bit with my fingers and press it down with my fingers. That way it's just a good top stitch that overhangs a little bit. Now I'm going to grab some tape and tape the sides so that this stays as flat as possible. So now one of the questions I had with this step was, on the lining side, do we do the same? Should we also pull this back and top stitch with the lining back as well? You can. Honestly, this is just going to be inside of the clear pocket. It's not up against a zipper, so you don't really have to worry about anything catching on that lining. It's a little bit more work if you do it. I'm not going to do it today, but you definitely can fold up the lining the exact same way you did with this exterior fabric. However, it's just not necessary. So now we're going to take this back to the machine and we're going to have the machine top stitch along this top edge right here. Okay, so once you're done with that, let's remove this from the machine and we're just going to repeat that same process for this bottom side edge. So now we have this really nice little top stitch line here on the front. We're just going to repeat this for the bottom. Take your exterior fabric, your side fabric. It's going to go on the bottom edge or it's going to go on the other side, depending on how you look at this. So I'm just gonna line it up so that the bottom edge of my side fabric, that long edge, overextends this long stitched edge along my clear vinyl by about 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch. Just try to keep it straight. There's a lot of eyeballing here. And then I'm just going to tape down the sides. So once we have that taped down, let's flip this over and do the same thing on the other side. So you can see here I have my other lining piece. I'm just gonna push that up out of the way. If you top stitch this up, this should already be up. If you didn't, you don't have to move it. It shouldn't extend far enough to get in the stitches, but just to be safe. Now grab your other lining side piece and we're going to lay it right side down and we're gonna let it overextend this bottom stitched line by about 1/4 of an inch. And just keep it as straight as you can. Like I said, in future steps, we're gonna be trimming this down so it's the size we need it to be. There we go. Now let's take this to the machine so we can tack down this bottom side edge. There we go. So now you can remove the tape for the exterior. And now we're just gonna fold this back, leaving about 1/8 of an inch overhanging the stitch. So you see, here's my stitch. I'm just leaving about 1/8 of an inch to overhang. That will just help prevent any of our stitching on the sides here and beneath this from showing in the end. Just give it a nice clean look. The hardest part I have here is getting this line here straight. I find that sometimes one edge kind of goes up further than the other, but that's okay. This is not a practice of perfection. So now I'm just going to tape this down after I finger press this edge as best as I can. Once again, you can get a pressing cloth here and a small iron and press it with an iron just to get it super flat, but finger pressing should be fine. Okay, now let's just take this to the embroidery machine, and the next step is just going to top stitch along this edge. After that, come back with your hoop and we're gonna work on the next hoop. There we go, that is the end of hoop 1. You can go ahead and take this out of your hoop now. Just gonna put my hoop to the side. Take off all of your tape. And now we can just remove the tearaways. So I just gently push along my seams and rip off this tearaway. You can also rip out the tearaway from inside the window here. So it should just pull right off, just like that. There we go. So this should be about what everything looks like. You can see that my lining overextends more than my exterior since I didn't top stitch it down. I'm okay with that. So before we move on to the next step, I'm gonna give the back of this just a quick press. Since I didn't top stitch it, it's a little loosey-goosey, and I find it much easier to work with if it's pressed in place. So I just have a scrap piece of fabric here. I'm going to cover my design because I don't want my iron to touch that clear vinyl. And then using my iron, I will just gently press over the back of this just to get it as flat as possible. There we go. And you don't want any more than just a really quick press when you have this clear vinyl here. So now take your window panel, and if you have a directional print here, make sure that your direction is right side up, facing whichever side is the top. And we're going to trim off the top edge of our clear vinyl. So we're gonna grab a ruler, and we're gonna measure 1/4 of an inch above this top stitch line right here where that, for me, it's that green thread. I'm gonna measure 1/4 of an inch above that stitch line, and I'm gonna grab my rotary cutter and just slice this down so that it's nice and clean right there. We need this edge to be nice and flat for the next step. All right, so you can see my top edge is nice and clean. My sides and my bottom are still very rough. I'm okay with that. I will deal with those later. Right now, the next step is going to be attaching the top fold over this top edge. So now grab your top fabric, and this is for hoop 2, and we're gonna fold it in half, wrong sides together, with the long edges coming in to meet, just like this. We're gonna fold it hot dog style. Use your iron to press this down. Go ahead and open up your fold, and now take the long edges, which are parallel to that fold, and fold those in wrong sides together so that those long raw edges meet that fold, and then press that with your iron. Let's go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So the long edges should now be raw edges meeting in the center, wrong sides together, with the right side out. And then I'm just gonna repress this, folding the entire unit in half, so all of my long raw edges are now hidden inside of the folded fabric. Once you have this prepped, just set it to the side. Now grab your bottom hoop and grab your tearaway fabric, and now let's hoop a new piece of tearaway. So I'm just gonna snap in my top hoop. There we go. And now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to run the placement stitch for the next step. So for this next step, you can see the file looks just like this. This is our second file, and it's pretty much just a long, skinny rectangle. I'm going to move this design more towards the left side of my hoop, since I'll be adding on the bottom part, my clear pocket over here on the right. So we're going to be stitching a lot on this top left long edge, and we'll be adding the clear part over here on the right side. So I'm just going to move it closer towards the left edge, and then I'll trace it real quick. And again, when choosing colors, I'm just going to choose the same color I've been working with, which is that dark green. And I use the same color for every step. Again, make sure you're on automatic manual. If you're on a single needle, then you don't have to worry about this. You just want to make sure the machine stops after every single step. All right, so now let's run the placement stitch for hoop 2. So now I'm going to remove my hoop from the machine and work on it at the table to make it a little bit more clear. You could do this step at the machine though if you wanted to. So here is where we're at. So now the next few stitches are going to be working on this left long edge right here. So what you want to do is grab your little hot dog fold of the top fabric, and we're going to lay it so that the bottom edge that's folded, so you have your double fold here on the bottom edge is going to go up against the right long edge of your placement stitch, just like that. So just line it up with that placement stitch. So your raw edges should be up right here. The top single fold is all the way here on the left. We're going to open up our entire top fabric here, just like this, and we're going to add some tape to these short edges on the top and the bottom. There we go. So your unit should be covering that skinny rectangle that we just stitched down entirely. The right single folded edge is right along the right long stitch line. So that left long stitch line is behind our fabric right now because that's the stitch line we're going to be working on. Now let's take this back to the embroidery machine and we're going to run a tack down, and what that's going to do is just going to trace the long left edge, so it's going to go over our fabric right here. Okay, so that step is just holding down this fabric right here. Everything should be lined up because we lined it up with that right long stitch line. Now grab your window unit with the exterior right side up, and what you want is for this stitch line here, let me see if you can see. See this little green stitch line here on my clear vinyl? We want that line to overlap the line we just made at our embroidery machine, that tack down line right here that runs just a little bit in from the right side of our fabric. We want this line on our clear vinyl to go right over that. So just line it up as much as you can. There we go. Now remove your tape, and with these units still lined up, fold over this left top fold so that it covers your clear pocket, and it should line up just with the bottom fold as well over here. There we go. So you don't want to fold it over real deep. It should line up with the same fold that's underneath the clear pocket. It's just a nice little clean sandwich. I'm going to grab some more tape and just tape down these side edges. There we go. So this is where you should be. We have this top strip nice and folded down. Remember, the bottom edge of our clear pocket is a mess. So that top edge that we cleaned up for our clear pocket is right up against here, against the fold. It's all lined up nice and neat. Now we're going to take this back to the machine, and the next step is going to tack down this entire top so that it all stays together really nice. All right, once you have this top edge stitched in place, we can now remove this. We're done with hoop 2. So once you have it out of the hoop, you can just pop it away from your stitching, just like that. You might notice you have a little bit of stitching that wants to stay with the stabilizer. That's just because we didn't do anything with this other stitching here during placement. There we go. We can just trim that down. All right, so we can throw away this stabilizer. So now what I like to do before we move on is just clean this up a tiny bit. Again, none of this has to be measured out to anything perfect. I just want to trim off some of this because we do want some straight lines here on the sides. So I'm just going to grab a rotary cutter and a ruler, and I'm going to line up over here on the right edge. I'm going to line up one of my grid lines with the top edge so it's nice and straight, and then I'll use my rotary cutter and just slice off this raw edge over here, getting off that overhang. And if my lining or my exterior are a little wonky, it'll just clean them up. I'm not trying to make it smaller, I'm just trying to get a straight line. So once I have the right side cleaned up, I'm going to repeat that on the left side. So you can see here on the left side, I am going to cut off a good amount of this lining fabric over here. I'm using the left side of my exterior fabric as my guide for where I'm going to trim. All right, so I have this cleaned up. I'm just gonna set this to the side and let's prep hoop 3. So just like before, I'm gonna grab my bottom hoop and I'm gonna grab my tearaway. So now we're gonna take this to the embroidery machine and we're just gonna run a quick placement stitch for our zipper. Make sure you're loading the 3rd file. Like I said, for me, it's a file that does not have a number on the end of it. So for this hoop, I'm changing up the colors just a little bit. Most of the colors are still going to be that dark green, which is for me number 6. But then on the 4th and 3rd from the last step, so that's going to be steps 8 and 9, I'm actually going to change the thread color for that because that's going to be my placement and tack down for my D-ring, and I want to be able to see that, and it's very hard to see that if it's the same color as the rest of the thread. So all the other ones are going to be number 6 for me, and then I'm going to choose something a little bit brighter, so for me it's going to be number 4 for those 2 steps, and then the last 2 steps are going to go back to being number 6. That's just personal preference, but steps 8 and 9 for the file I'm working on, I like to have a little bit more noticeable so I can see where I need to put stuff. Again, we're on automatic manual. We want it to stop after every single needle change. This is what your design looks like. It's again just a rectangle, but it has a lot more lines in it. So I'm just going to center this and trace it, and then we're going to run our placement stitch. So this box right here is just placement for our zipper. So I'm going to have my zipper, when closed, going all the way towards the left. You want a long zipper here because we don't want to deal with the zipper pull while we're working on the majority of these steps. So I'm just going to pull this as close as I can to the left without having to worry about it fly off. And then I'm going to take this long right side of my zipper and I'm just going to line it up right inside that box. So this is the only difference between the 2 files. If you're using a number 3 zipper, this box is going to be just a bit thinner. A number 5 zipper, we have a bit fatter of a box just because the zipper tape is wider. Now I'm going to use masking tape for this because it's a little bit more strong than my washi tape, and I really don't want this zipper moving around on me. That would be a huge pain if this zipper tape started getting tangled while I was stitching. And then you can even tape your zipper pull down to your frame if you'd like, just so you don't have to worry about it getting underneath there. If you're using a big zipper pull, you're definitely going to want to be taping it in place as we move on through the next steps. So now we're going to take this back to the machine and we're just going to tack down this zipper. After you have the zipper tacked down, the next step is going to be a placement stitch for the bag. So let's go ahead and run that before we add anything else. All right, here we go. So now you have kind of an idea of the size of your bag in the end. It is a small bag and it's just so cute. So now let's grab our window unit. We're going to take it and lie it exterior, right side down. The top fold should be towards the left. And then this bottom stitches right here should line up with the bottom, so the very far right stitches of your stitch out on your stabilizer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fold right here, the top of the fold on the bottom of my clear vinyl, and I'm going to line that up with the top edge of my zipper tape. So exterior right side to the front of the zipper, lining up the folded edge with the top of my zipper tape. It's a little hard to do since my zipper's white. There we go. So now the bottom raw edge overextends the zipper. It goes down into the placement of the bag. I'm going to grab a little ruler here because if this stitch line right here were to continue all the way to the top, I want it to line up with the bottom stitch line of my clear vinyl. So I'm just going to use a ruler to help me line this up. So I'm just going to move this down a little bit. There we go. So now I have the bottom edges all lined up. And now I'm just going to grab some masking tape and tape this in place. Okay, now let's take this back to the machine and run the tack down stitch, and then we'll meet back here. So once you have that window secured in place, you can remove your masking tape that was holding it down. Now grab your front fabric piece, so this is that exterior piece of fabric that's going to be seen behind the window pocket, and lay it right side down so that the bottom long edge lines up with the bottom raw edge of your zipper tape. Again, don't worry too much about perfection here. Most of these pieces are too big and will be cut down later. So if you're not totally lined up, you're going to trim this down later anyways. So I'm just going to use my washi tape here and tape this in place. Now we're going to run the next tack down stitch. It's just going to hold this exterior piece in place. Okay, as you saw, I lost a little bit of control of my zipper right before it started. That's why we tape everything down so much. Okay, so now we're going to flip this around. So take your exterior piece and pull it down. And I like to just give it a quick finger press. You could, again, cover this with a pressing cloth and take a small iron just to press this down nice and firm. I'm just gonna press with my fingers. And I'm going to tape the bottom edges of this exterior down so I don't have to worry about it moving around on me. And once you have that exterior piece nice and flat, then take your window and pull that down over it. So isn't that cute? Now we have that little window pocket. And I like to pull it nice and firm. This is why I also suggested you cut down your clear vinyl. On one of my previous ones, my clear vinyl actually extended all the way over here and I couldn't really fold it down nicely. So by not having that clear vinyl, not having that bulk there, you can get a nice crisp line right here against the zipper. So I like to pull it pretty taut, and then I'm gonna add some more tape to hold it down here on the bottom edge. All right, now we can take this back to the machine and it's gonna tack down all of these units in place so that we don't have to worry about this going anywhere. If you need to tape down your zipper, make sure you do that. All right, so this should give you a good idea of what it's gonna look like. It's such an adorable little pocket. So now I'm just gonna put this to the side while I prep my lining. So now I have my inside lining piece, which is that bigger lining piece, and I'm gonna lay it right side down with the long raw edge up top. And I'm actually just gonna fold this down about 3/4 of an inch. I'm not really measuring it. I just want a nice folded top edge so I don't have any raw edges on the inside of the bag in the finished product. This is optional, but it provides a cleaner finish, so I'll show you. On this first bag I made here, you can see at the top right here, I didn't fold it down, so this cotton piece here is a raw edge. On this second version here, if I open it up, I folded it down, so when it stitched it in place, I have a more finished edge. That's just a personal preference. I like the folded edges inside. You don't have to do this, but if you want to, just take the extra step and do it now. Now grab your hoop that has your project and let's just fold this right side down. So we're looking at the back side of our stabilizer. So now you want to find your bottom zipper tack down line. So you'll see up here we have this bigger rectangle, which was our placement for our zipper, and then we have this interior rectangle that's a little bit skinnier. That is our tack down. So the bottom edge here is our zipper tack down. Take your lining fabric and lay it right side up, and if you folded that edge, take that folded edge, and you want this to be just above the zipper tack down line, so it should cover it, but just a scotch. And then take some tape and tape this in place. We definitely want this tape down since this is going to be underneath the hoop while we're sewing. We're not going to have a good view of it. I'm going to add a little piece on the bottom as well, just to make sure it doesn't all crumple up on me. Okay, so once you have the lining taped in place, let's take this back to the machine and run the next placement stitch. All right, so now we have most of the stuff in place. You can honestly remove a lot of your tape. Everything is pretty much tacked down. Let's look at the back. Yeah, so that's all caught under there. That's fine. Okay, so now what we want to do is grab our zipper pull and move it in towards the center of our design. There we go. And now we're going to go on the back. And what we want to do is we want to remove the tearaway stabilizer that's in that inner rectangle that was formed from tacking down our zipper. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my scissors to poke a hole there. And then you can just use your fingers and gently pull this out. We don't want to pull the tearaway off of everything here. We only want to pull the tearaway out of where this zipper is. So just be gentle, move around. Seem to be having a lot of bird nesting today. I think I might need to change out my needle. Okay, so once you have that all trimmed away, I'm just going to add some tape to my zipper again just to hold it in place. I'm just going to tape down this edge over here and tape down the other edge as well. Again, make sure your zipper pull is in the middle. If you have a really big zipper pull, you're going to want to tape that down too. So you can tape it in towards your clear card slot pocket. The tape will work really well against that clear vinyl. So the next step is going to be the placement stitch for the handle. I switched my thread color for this so that we can see it easier. Okay, so it's a little bit easier to see. It's kind of like a bright yellow, bright green over here. I just like it to be a different color because if it's the same color as the stitches, you can see it goes over those stitches, so it gets kind of hard to see. So now I'm going to grab my 3/4 of an inch D-ring and my 2 inch by 3/4 of an inch piece of cork and then just wrap it around that bottom straight edge of my D-ring. And I'm going to lay this over my stitched placement mark. Now, the raw edges need to go out towards the left and the metal needs to go in towards the right. The goal here is we don't want the needles to hit our D-ring. So I tape this down. So I have it overhang on the left of those stitch marks by about 1/4 of an inch. And then I tape it down. And then I'm going to tape my D-ring against that plastic as well, because the tape works really well on the metal and the plastic. So I'm just going to kind of pull it, trying to keep it straight, but I'm going to pull it a little bit, grab it with my tape, and then tape it to the clear plastic on the center here. That will just make sure that this doesn't start moving around and get under the needles. If your needles hit this metal, they're gonna break, and it's gonna be a pain. So the goal is to not have the needles hit the metal. So now we're gonna take this back to the machine, and it's going to tack down our little D-ring holder right here. Now grab your back lining fabric. So this is actually an exterior fabric. So it's the back fabric of your bag, and we're gonna lay that right side down. And make sure it's completely covering all of your stitching. So I'm just gonna lay it over just like that. Make sure it covers everything. So the sides and the bottom and the top, there we go. It should be a good amount bigger than your design. I can just use some washi tape for this. I'm just gonna tape some of the edges to hold it in place. I know it's a little hard to get it really flat because that zipper pull inside, but just do your best. Okay, let's take this back to the machine and run the tack down stitch to hold this in place. All right, we're almost there. Now let's flip over the hoop. So we're looking at the back, and we see the lining here. If you have any crazy threads, you can go ahead and trim those down now. It's gonna be easier to trim it down now than it will be later. So now grab your inside back lining and lay that right side down, and make sure it covers the entire stitched area. So over the zipper, over the bottom edge over here, it should be bigger than you need it to be. All right, so now we're gonna take this back to the machine, and when you're inserting it, make sure you feel underneath and make sure that the lining didn't shift on you. It's very easy for this to kind of get pushed out of place while we're inserting our hoops. So just feel it, check underneath, make sure it's all lined up, and then we're gonna run our last stitches. It's just gonna put it all together. So there you go, all the sewing steps are now done. You can take it out of your hoop for the last time. Now you don't really have to worry about removing the tape because we're just gonna cut all this off anyways. So grab your scissors, and with the wrong side of the lining facing up, this is where you can see that hole on the bottom. What we wanna do is we wanna cut into our unit and leave this hole extended. So I start over here on the right, and I cut just straight up from the bottom until I'm about 1/4 of an inch from the stitching. Anywhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch, honestly. And then I'm just gonna stay anywhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch all the way around the stitching on the sides. Cut through my zipper, go all the way up around the top edge. Go down the other side, and over here I'm cutting through the zipper and the excess of my D-ring strap. And then once I go around this corner, I'm going to stop once I get to the end of the stitching, just right there. And then I'm going to veer off and just go straight down. There we go. So you can just throw all of this away. And then what I do is I just cut this down to the shortest piece. So we have this overhang right here on the exterior. I'm just gonna cut everything down so that we just have that small overhang there. You can trim your corners if you'd like, though it's so small, it's not really necessary. Okay, so now we're just gonna turn this out. So go to your lining side over here, and if you have any more of the tearaway stabilizer in here, you can just rip that out. Don't need that. So going between my two lining cuts, I'm going to turn the whole bag, lining right side out, just like this. And then, just to get a good look, I'm gonna open up my zipper all the way, and then I can flip it so that it's exterior side out. I always just like to look at it before I close the lining. I know that's kind of silly. There we go. So you can poke out the corners around your zipper. So I find that not using any sort of batting or fusible fleece actually makes this just, you know, turn out really nice. I used fusible fleece on a second version, and it was just a little too puffy for me. So this is what our little pouch looks like. Isn't that adorable? It's so little and cute and useful. Okay, so let me show you how I've been closing the lining in this. So flip the whole unit so that it's lining right sides out. And then I just grab a small ruler and measure this little opening. It's about 3 inches. So now I'm gonna grab my heat and bond, and I'm just gonna trim down a piece of heat and bond that's 3 inches by 1/2 inch. I'm completely eyeballing this. I'm just gonna trim it down a little bit more to make it 1/2 inch. So now the heat and bond has a paper side and it has a gluey side. Take the gluey side and lay that against your fabric. And then I just iron right over the paper side. I haven't had a problem with it. So I'm just gonna press over the paper side, and what we're doing is we're just melting that glue so that it sticks really well to the fabric. And now we're just gonna let that cool for a minute, and then we'll apply it to the other side. So once that's cooled, you can go ahead and remove the paper. And then we're just gonna fold these in right sides together. So one side has just one little sheet of lining, the other side has all the others. So I'm just gonna fold in the thicker side first. And then I'm gonna take the lining side and fold that in. So the linings are right sides together. And then just kind of pull on the edges to try to get it as neat as possible. And then once it's all flat, grab your iron and press over the thinner lining side, or just the opposite side. You're trying to get to that glue on the heat and bond and melt it again. So now it will melt and hold both sides of the fabric in place. Okay, so once you have that in place, give it another minute or so to cool down, and then turn it back right side out. If you try to turn it right now, it's very likely that it will just separate because the glue is so warm, but once it gets nice and cool, it holds it together really nicely. And you're done. Okay, so once that heat and bond is all cool, we can just flip this back out. This is so cute. I love this little pouch, and it's very quick with an embroidery machine. It's something that, I mean, we could make out of sewing machine, but I feel like it'd be a little bit more difficult, especially working with that clear vinyl, because that clear vinyl does get so sticky on our sewing machine feet. I just love how this looks. I honestly have a lot to learn. But that's where you guys are gonna come in. If you have experience making these, please leave as many comments as you'd like down in the comment section of this video. You can also send me an email. I'm Jessica@OklaRoots.com. There are so many more of these patterns from Rosebarn that we're gonna go through. I'm so excited. If there's one in particular that you're just itching to try, make sure you leave a comment down below letting me know which one it is. Thank you so much for sewing along with me today. I hope that this inspires you to bust out your embroidery machine and use it in totally different ways. I love classic embroidery, having those big stitch outs. I love being able to make accessories. It just boggles my mind what people think up to do in these embroidery machines. It's so much fun. One of the most fun tools you can have in your sewing room. I hope that you're having a great day. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. Rosebarn, thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you for allowing me to film a tutorial today. Have a great day. Get out there and make something. Bye.